Hi guys, welcome to your channel Digital Empaths, where we discuss on the interesting trends and the different aspects of the digital ecosystem. I'm your host Sushant Ajmani, and in our today's Weekend Knowledge series, we're going to touch on another interesting topic, that is data literacy, which is quite a hot topic these days, especially when you go on our LinkedIn network and we see so many posts, so many articles debating on this whole concept of data literacy as well as digital dexterity, which is another new term came into the industry 2, 3 years ago and made highly popularized by Gartner. Now, in order to understand the whole concept behind data literacy, which is not a new topic, I think it's been there in the industry for more than 2 decades now, at least since I entered in the industry early 2000s, we have always been talking about how to make the workforce more and more equipped with the digital fundamentals, more equipped with the analytical fundamentals, and how to make them ready to derive the true value out of the which is sitting in their enterprise data warehouses, sitting on the data lakes on the cloud, or even deriving from those smaller data marts or your multidimensional cubes. So in order to understand this concept better, let's go back into the history. So let's talk about those early 2000s when the whole wave of digitizations came into picture. During those days, the only digital player we had was Amazon, which came in around 96, 97. They were the early players in the industry. After them, lots of new websites came into picture, the whole wave of marketplaces, e-commerce websites. eBay was a big player during those days. And apart from that, there were a lot of blogs and forums, and as well as the different niche publisher websites were there. And the major focus was on acquisition. The first decade, the entire focus was on acquisition, that how to build up that consumer base, how to build up those portals, those e-commerce websites faster so that we can create stickiness, so that we can have a decent traffic on our website and we could meet their immediate needs. During those days, the whole supply chain ecosystem was not that mature enough. Okay. And apart from that, the digital as an industry was quite in a nascent stage. I still remember in early 2000s, it was so difficult to justify the investment on an analytical resource in a company, because most of the people who were in the field of analytics during those days, they were perceived more as an implementation guys, because our role was more around putting those JavaScript pages on the websites. So understanding of HTML, CSS, JavaScript was much more important than understanding the technicalities behind how those analytical tools used to work, or understanding the basics behind those metrics. So the first 5, 6 years in the decade of 2000 to 2010, the entire energy was spent into putting those JavaScript codes on each and every page on the website. The whole concept of data layer was not there at that moment. So the companies were finally touching each and every page on their website. The standardization of templates was not there. The CMS was still a new topic during those days. So the website was quite in a messy stage, a lot of unstructured content, very unstructured way of assorting the data, building the taxonomy, building the navigation. The UI was never a focus. Customer experience was never a focus. The main objective was how to set up the websites faster, how to open the stores faster, how to make those content-oriented websites start driving traffic. And during those days, after putting the pixels on the website, the most common question that we used to get from the business was, what is happening on the website? How much traffic we are getting? And majority of the conversations were around visits, unique visitors, page view, visit depth, average session duration, average time spent on the page. So these were some of the standard metrics we used to spend a lot of time on. And during those days, WebTrends was a big player. Omniture still did not reach that critical mass. So they started picking up beyond 2004, 2005. But prior to that, we never had the whole SaaS-based approach when we talk about analytics platform. Those old licensing approach was there. After the emergence of Google Analytics in the market, the whole focus shifted towards the UI, simplicity, that how to do a smarter storytelling with limited set of metrics, how to give people a more intuitive way of consuming the insights rather than juggling with those EVARs and SPROPs and events. I remember during those days, Site Catalyst version 12 or 13, which was one of the leading analytics tools during those days, we used to have roughly around 75 to 80 out of the box reports. And apart from that, we used to have like 50 EVARs, 50 SPROPs, and maybe around 20, 30 events. So roughly around another 120 reports you can set up by customizing those variables and events. And it was so daunting to educate the business about those variables, that what is the relevance behind that, what is an expiry of these particular variables, at what stage these variables capture the data, at what stage the different events gets triggered, when do you should use this particular event in this particular report, when you should not use this event in a report, how to do segmentation. Segmentation became a more hotter topic when Google Analytics came into picture and when they started preaching a lot about the whole concept of advanced segments. And they started talking about filtered views, filtered profiles. And it became so evident that now this is the time when the business users need to take a step back and start thinking logically that how to derive the value out of the clickstream data that they're capturing in these particular tools. Privacy was not at all a major concern. Most of the data that the businesses were capturing in these clickstream platforms is all non-PII data. And at the most, they were trying to integrate with platforms like Google AdWords, integrating with the email marketing platforms. And the various levels of integrations were not there. The very few players were there during those days, like Cheetah Mail was there, Responses was there, eDialog was a big player from UK. Apart from that, Google AdWords has always been there, allowing you to see the effectiveness of your display and performance-based campaigns. Then a trend shift started happening, especially when the global financial crisis happened, 2007, 2008. A new wave of customer experience analytics came into picture. People started talking about A/B experiments, multivariate experiments. Why? Because whenever the crisis situation happens, whether it's financial meltdown, whether it is any kind of a digital industry crisis, the first thing that comes to people's mind is optimization. That how to smartly optimize the marketing spend, how to smartly optimize the consumer journey. Because the journeys were earlier were focused more on the individual touch points. But after the whole financial crisis happened, the companies took a step back and started thinking about how to get more value from the limited investments. Because the marketing budgets got slashed by more than 20, 30% during those days. And you did not have too much money in your hand to do aggressive display marketing or aggressive search marketing. So the only option you had during those days was that whatever money that I have in my pocket, how much value I can derive from that. So that was the time companies like Wider Funnel came into picture. We had tools like Optimizely was there. You have a Visual Website Story was there during those days. You had tools like Google Experiments was there, which created a whole new wave of running lots of experiments on the website so that people can start optimizing each and individual landing pages on their website, the conversion workflows, the checkout pages on their website, and also the key anchor pages, the category and the product pages, and make sure whatever traffic which is coming on the website, it's not bouncing off immediately. The people are sticking on the website, they're finding the relevant content, they're going deeper into the taxonomy, they're able to reach a product or a shopping cart page, the abandonment rate can be put under control, and eventually the checkout to order conversion can be improved. So during those days, the kind of data literacy focus was that how to
educate the business about how to smartly run the experiments. What is the definition of a sample audience? What is the definition of confidence level, confidence intervals? Okay. And what is the meaning of statistical significance? What is the meaning of normalized data? So all those new topics came into picture. And a lot of new blogs came into picture which started talking or preaching about this new subject of A/B experiments, multivariate experiments, Taguchi method. And Adobe came up with their own acquisition. They came up with their product called Test and Target. And after the arrival of this whole testing era, which lasted for 7 to 8 years, starting from 2008 till 2014-15, this whole era, a lot of new startups came into picture, which started helping both the mid-size and the large e-commerce as well as content websites that how to smartly run the experiments. Then what happened was, again, a new wave happened of the big data. When we started seeing a whole new wave of apps came into picture. A lot of companies started building up their mobile websites, building up their iOS and Android apps, and that became, again, big pain in the ass for the business users, that how to track these applications, how to have a cross-channel journey view, how to make sure the people, when they're switching from a desktop to a mobile website to a mobile app, how can I track that cross-device journey? And as more and more devices came into picture, more and more channels came into picture, capturing those consumer journeys was becoming much more important than just capturing those individual touch points. Those days, the data literacy was a completely different game. Those days, business users were wanted to know that how to understand the person who is switching from one device to another, is he the same person or not? How to smartly capture the cookies, how to go beyond the cookies, how to keep track a person based on their IP address or their browser IDs if the cookies are disabled, how to capture so many third-party pixels which the company started putting on their website. Your pixels for your double click, your app nexus, your media math. There are a whole plethora of marketing pixels came into picture. Now, if you look at our MarTech world, you can imagine there will be more than 8,000 to 10,000 small to mid-sized players are there. And I remember during those days, some of the large publishers I used to work with, if you go to their websites or their apps, on an average, 65 to 120 pixels used to get triggered on some of the key anchor pages as well as the conversion pages. And each and every pixel is trying to look for that attribution, for that credit of that particular success or for that particular goal conversion. And it was so difficult to educate the businesses about what these pixels mean, where the data is actually going, how to track these pixels in a more effective manner in analytics tool. Because on the other hand, all these third-party marketing platforms had their own proprietary analytics platforms. You have mobile app-focused platforms, which were like Localytics of the world, Flurries of the world. You have their own DMP platforms specific for the mobile app during this, your Lotamis of the world. And then for the mobile websites also, you had plethora of analytics tools came into picture. Kissmetrics came into picture, Mixpanel came into picture. And companies were completely scrambling with so much data coming from so many different sources, and there was no standardization of the metric definition. What Google is claiming something as a visitor and what Adobe Analytics is claiming something as a visitor was quite different. The definition of visit was not very standard. So the Digital Analytics Association as a body, which has always been active since the early 2000s, they have played an instrumental role in bringing that standardization, creating those standard frameworks, and played a very important role in building that a literate workforce across the United States and different parts of the Asia. And also played a very important role in tying up with the local bodies in Western Europe to create more and more literacy within the organizations. But that was not enough, because as the whole macroeconomic factor started becoming more and more complex, the whole behavioral science as a subject started becoming more prominent. Consumer behavior started changing so significantly because of too many channels, too many devices. It was so difficult for the business users to make sense out of this data and take any proactive action. So then again, a new wave of data literacy came into picture, especially after 2017, 2018, when the terms around augmented analytics came into picture. Companies like ThoughtSpot or Data Robot, which have been there in the industry for the last 6-7 years now, started their journey 2012, 2013. After that, we saw new companies like Answer Rocket, Yellowfin BI came into picture, Outlier is there, Pervadier is there. A lot of new players came into picture, which started preaching the whole subject around augmented analytics. That how to derive value from the data, your own first-party data sitting in your data lakes, sitting in your enterprise data warehouse, and build a more smarter semantic layer on top of that data lake, where you are holding, aggregating all the cross-channel data and hoping that something miracle will happen. But nothing happened. The whole wave of big data, cloud infrastructure actually added the problem more than solving the problem. Because once the data started aggregating on the cloud, companies were of the perception that once we aggregate all these 35, 40, 60 data sources, it will be quite easier to make sense out of this data. It will be quite easier to derive value from there. But the problem is, once you store data in a data lake, you're storing the data in its raw native format. Okay, which is unlike our older days when you were defining a schema first based on your star schema philosophy, building up your massive enterprise data warehouses, carving out your data marts, building those smaller multidimensional cubes, and building those canned reports on top of it using platforms like Ab Initio, Cognos, or Business Objects. But now, after the whole wave of data lakes came into picture, you are dealing with very fluid, free flow data. And what the businesses wanted to do was that how to look at this data as a totality and derive value from there. So the first thing that came into mind is, you know what, let's start plugging the enterprise BI tools on top of it. Let's bring Tableaus, let's bring Click, let's bring Power BIs of the world on top of these fluid data platform. Let's start building those data models behind the scene and start empowering the users with the philosophy of self-service BI. Let them slice and dice the data as per their own discretion. Let them decide what they want to see, what they don't want to see. Let them decide what kind of a story they want to see, or what kind of story they don't want to see. So the whole wave of data storytelling came into picture starting from 2000 to 2014 post. There are a lot of amazing data storytellers came into picture. Brent Hikes is there, Jason Krantz is there, and we have a lot of new people, emerging talent like Gaby Steele is there, who started preaching this whole subject behind that how to do effective data storytelling within the client organization. How to start empathizing with the business users, because the business users are not just looking for dashboards or scorecards anymore, because that wave of dashboard and scorecard is gone. What they are looking for now is the solution, the proactive solution to their problems. And those solutions are not just the dashboards and scorecards. Those solutions are those small productized components, those smaller apps, those smaller applications, those smaller accelerators, which create an opportunity for them to take proactive action. And if you look at in the last 6-7 years, there's been massive investment have gone into building those smarter mobile apps for the executives, because the executives are tired looking at those sexy looking dashboards, those box and whisker plots, your scatter plots, your vertical bars, your trend charts, because they all are talking about the factual data. What is required in the today's landscape is something beyond those facts. Talk about those anomalies, not just your point anomalies, but your contextual anomalies. Go back into the look back window, look at your last 6 months, your 1 year, see how the anomalies are evolving or they're shaping up. look for causal factors. The causality is not a new subject. It's been there for more than 3-4 decades now. But it has become more important after data and channel proliferation, because businesses are not just focusing on that you just validate my hypothesis. They are also focusing on that how you can bring the macroeconomic aspect into the storytelling view. So in my opinion, the top 3 skills which the companies need to hone in the next 10 years are economics, behavioral science, and the supply chain. These are the 3 most important skills that needs to be developed in the workforce than your artificial intelligence or your cloud infrastructure or your DevOps. Because those are just means to an end. In order for you to do the smarter data storytelling, in order for you to meet those unmet needs of the business users who are looking for more relevant insights, more contextual insights, more actionable, more human-friendly view, you need to understand the macroeconomic factors. Especially if you look at the current pandemic, which is going on across the globe, and impacted more than 200 countries in last 7 months. So many factors which have happened in these 7 months, which are completely unprecedented, which we never imagined, and which has completely changed the consumer behavior on so many different aspects. We have seen a significant growth in the e-commerce penetration in the last 10 weeks. We're talking about 27% penetration. I remember when I left United States in 2010, we were in around 6.4% in United States. That was the ratio, the percentage of e-commerce as a percentage of total retail sales. And now we're talking about 27%. Now it has mellowed down to 22% as per the latest report from MasterCard. So, and even if you look at the UK market, in the last 10 weeks, their e-commerce penetration has gone above 33%. That's ridiculous. And that has happened because of the one major category is the daily essentials. The lot of new consumers have entered into the bandwagon of the e-commerce wave. Not just the millennials, even our parents who were never digital savvy, who never did online shopping, they also started adopting the digital channels, started playing with the grocery apps so that they can have the groceries delivered to their doorstep during this lockdown phase. Apart from this, if you see here, the insurance sector boosted significantly because people, when they are in the fear, a lot of distress, what the first thing comes into our mind is, let's buy more and more medical and health insurance. Let's buy more life insurance. Let's protect me and my family. Of course, the lending business is significantly impacted because people don't have any visibility about the revenue. The labor migration has happened. Because of the labor migration, because of the lockdown, because of that, the demand shock phase has kicked in. Demand is not at all there. People are not burning the fuel anymore. Petrol pumps are idle. People are not traveling. The sales and distribution channel is running at its least capacity. Transportation sector is significantly impacted. Apart from that, the manufacturing is on halt. Because of their production downtime, millions of dollars have been lost in the last 7-8 months. Significant amount of working capital has been locked into inventory. The interest rates have gone up. Despite of the fact that the central governments have passed a lot of moratorium for the banks, but they are not getting transferred to the NBFCs. NBFCs are not able to transfer back to the fintech companies. The MSME sector is struggling that how to revive the value chain. So many different macroeconomic factors are influencing the consumer behavior. And understanding of these behaviors is significantly important because these behavioral changes are going to make your current models, your so-called machine learning models, is completely useless, of no value. Because the way you used to calculate your risk appetite, your risk tolerance, or risk capacity for your MSMEs or those individual consumers, the whole philosophy, the whole formulas, the whole equation is going to change now. So you need to look at various other proxy measures to recalibrate your models so that you can revive the whole lending industry. And that is just one example. So these are some of the important skills that needs to be inculcated in the workforce. Apart from that, we need to completely decentralize the analytics function. For the last 2 decades, a lot of companies still have not grasped the idea that if you want to create a whole data-driven culture, if you want an insights-first organization, you need to decentralize your analytics operation. You just cannot make analytics stand in its own isolation and start churning reports, start churning those dashboards. This is a time when the whole decentralization of the analytics function has to happen. We need to create those hub and spoke models, keep your analytics teams, central teams leaner, and deploy your analysts, your data scientists in each and every business function. Let them be your frontline workers. Let them work closely with your merchandisers. Let them work closely with your e-commerce managers, with your marketing managers. Let them understand the whole concept of marketing attribution. Let them understand what does inventory fill rate means. Let them understand what is order lead time means. Let them understand what is miles per delivery means. Let them understand how the merchandising happens, how the promotions get set, what is an impact of these promotions on the consumer behavior, how the pricing changes impact the consumer behavior, how the changes in the checkout process, how the changes on the shopping cart page make so much impact on the cart abandonment and the checkout conversion. So all those things, they have to feel and imbibe. Unless and until your analytics people understands the day-to-day operational challenges of the business users, this whole wave of data literacy will never be successful. This is a wave, this is a time when we need to think about building those closed feedback loop. Because there's a lot of precious knowledge sitting in the conscious and subconscious mind of the business users, which oftentimes don't end up in the SharePoints or your knowledge management portal, which actually leave with them when they leave the organization. And you again have to reinvent the wheel. So it's very, very important that the businesses take a step back and think that how to productize this knowledge which our business users have, how to take this knowledge and convert that into some kind of a knowledge graph, some kind of a structure, some kind of an ontology, because in their brain, they know all those causalities. They know based on the business semantics, they know based on the category in which they play in, the kind of a product life cycle that they have, that what are those factors which influence the sales. They have those hypotheses already in their mind. It just needs validation. So what is more important is take that knowledge out of their conscious and subconscious mind and productize it, put into some kind of a structure, not the Word documents or the wiki page on the website. What we need is a knowledge graph or a book of knowledge, something which Google has mastered in the last 15 to 20 years. If you go to Google and you search for the keyword Albert Einstein, you will see how beautifully Google come up with a whole set of information around Albert Einstein, a Wikipedia page around him, the different books he published, the research he did, similar people of his era who did amazing discoveries and innovation, and a lot of other quotations from Albert Einstein. The same philosophy we need to apply within our own internal data lakes. It's not just about building that smarter MDM layer. What we need on top of an MDM layer is that whole philosophy of a knowledge graph, that how to structure the data in a more smarter way so that it can be easily translated into some kind of a metrics and vector, because that's what your machine learning models understand. Everything has to be translated into some vectors or metrics. So let's structure the data in such a way so that it is easy for your AI team to translate them into vectors, and those vectors can be used to train your ML-based models. And that is what is required in the next 10 years, that how to productize that knowledge. And apart from that, when we deploy your analysts and data scientists within individual functions, your each function will start becoming more data-driven. They will start thinking analytical. They will also start empathizing and appreciating the value of data. They will also start understanding that at what stage the data gets captured, how the data gets processed, how the data or insights are generated. Because for the last 10 years, what we are calling as insights are merely observations. Because an observation will only called an insight if there is a why baked in it, if there is a how baked in it, if it is relevant for my audience. If this does not have a context in it, if it does not explain the why and how, then that is still an observation. That is not an insight. So we need to understand that the business users are looking for more and more human-friendlier insights. What they want is something which is easy to digest, easy to act on right now. I remember, I think I've shared this story multiple times with my colleagues as well as my peers, that recently I was in a conversation with the head of supply chain operations, and he mentioned during the conversation that on a weekly basis, he gets roughly around 35 to 50 different types of dashboards and custom reports in his mailbox. And he has no clue which demands his immediate attention, because he does not have enough time to open each and every report and a dashboard and figure it out what action he needs to take. And despite of the fact that a lot of large companies have invested in those control towers or command centers, which are a bunch of screens showing all those tickers and those metric movements, still you don't know if that metric is going red or green. What do I do? What is an impact of that green and red on the overall business? Okay, a good example is if the fuel prices go high, what do I do? Should I invest in more transportation? Should I invest in more warehouses and open more and more warehouses closer to my customers so that my miles per delivery could be controlled? If the federal government is increasing the interest rate, what do I do? Shall I invest more money in my inventory, or should I invest less money in my inventory? Okay, how should I make the best use of my working capital? So these are some of the things that are the major worry for these supply chain guys. My network optimization, my hub optimization, especially in the last 7-8 years, there's a whole wave of third-party logistics have come up, which are much more mature than your internal linear supply chain infrastructure. They are the much more faster in adoption of the technology, data science, machine learning, and they have done amazing work in the last 7 to 8 years. And no doubt why we have more than 25 to 30 unicorns just in the logistics sector in the last 7 years. So this is the time when we need to start valuing the macroeconomic skills more, the behavioral science skills more, and also understand the back-end supply chain, the whole logistic infrastructure, because understanding of that is much more important if you want to give a better experience to your customers. Because making the website sexier, making your taxonomies more intuitive, making your search more effective, your checkout flow more effective, those are table stakes now. Because most of the e-commerce platforms that you see are very standardized. There are standard templates for product pages, standard templates for checkout pages. Everyone has a very standard nomenclature for the entire e-commerce portal. People think that's a very common thing. What consumers are focusing more on, that the satisfaction is beyond that checkout process. That once the checkout is done, from that moment, the whole order lead time, the cycle time is a much more powerful metric than your checkout conversion rate nowadays. And there are so many factors influences it. So it's very important that your data scientists, your analysts understand those terminologies. Only then they will start bringing the value in the data, in the story that they're communicating through dashboards or scorecards. So in the end, I would again urge to all my fellow listeners, as well as my peers, my colleagues, if you want to create a data-driven organization, if you want an insights-first culture, start embracing economics, behavioral science, and the whole value chain, the supply chain concepts in your workforce. And don't just get bogged down with the whole concepts of cloud infrastructure and AI, because they're not going to go anywhere. Those are just means to an end. They are enabling you. But once that infrastructure is laid it down, the value will not come from there. The value will come from these three skills that we need to inculcate in our workforce. So if you have any interesting comments, you have any perspective, please post it below this video. I'm very curious to learn from your experiences too, because the last 20 years in this industry have taught me a lot. I've worked with more than 200 brands in the last 20 years. I've trained more than 2,000 people, and each and every experience is so enriching, has made me unlearn a lot of old concepts and methodologies and framework which I have learned in the last 20 years, and just develop that infinite and explicit learning philosophy, because that's what will take the workforce to the next level. So until next video, until our next episode, stay safe, stay connected, and keep flourishing. Thank you very much.